Hey, this is Todd. Alyssa's here for our monthly chat. How are you doing, Alyssa?
I'm doing great. And you know what? What is this like? Maybe the sixth time or something we've hung out. It's a you know,
Yeah, something like
I
that.
I I misread your intro slide, and I've seen it before. I thought it said cheating worlds, one hex at a time. I was like, well, that's a different
Creating.
type of
The cheating
gaming.
comes later. The cheating comes later. First we create, then we cheat. Uh, so what's been going on? So I guess first things first, I'm always interested in, well, I mean, I'm interested in all kinds of stuff. How is the gaslight map? We need our gaslight
Going
map
okay.
update.
It's hit a stage where I'm labeling, and that's slow, man. That is slow.
I
I'm
believe
gonna be
it.
on that for a good part in January, and I've got to make a decision. So, it gives me less to share because it's like still labeling, still labeling. It's like, well, it looks exactly the same as last time. Yeah, but there's more labels on there. Um, so that's just a kind of a tedious sort of part I am
Now, I,
at
I
on
can't
it.
remember. I know you were vacillating between how much to label. Was a final decision reached, or are you still trying to figure out
I'm
how
gonna
much is enough?
what I want to do and what is practical, I think, are two different things. I'm gonna do main streets, side streets, and kind of stick with that. I don't think we can do all of the alleyways and everything. I don't think it's realistic, adding something like 1,000 labels. mm, I'll be at it until bloody March. I've got other things to do, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna hit a nice little sweet spot and just call it a day.
Nice. Did they give you a due date? How's that work with when is like how much of a timetable do you get? Is it constantly kind of in flux, or do you have like a hard stop of, hey, we have to have it by, I don't know, February
Every
1st
client's a little
or
bit different, so it can vary. But with these specifically, with Chaosium specifically, I had a deadline of like November, but they had things slip at their end a little bit. So they were like, you're good until January. So we're like, okay, so I can spend a little bit more effort on these labels. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'll endeavor to be kind of wrapped on it in January. And however far I get is however far I get. I think that's going to be my motto.
what do you usually do if you realize that not that you've bitten off more than you can chew, but that the deadline's approaching and maybe some things that you want to do or maybe you've started doing aren't going to be ready in time for the deadline? Do you usually, I mean, what's the process? Do you try to reach out and see if you can get more time to finish? Do you just back it off, or do you plan things in stages so that it's easy to kind of wipe down if you're kind of in the middle of, say, extra detail layers, and now you need to say, well, I'm not going to be able to finish all that detail, so I need to just hide that unfinished layer, and then I can send off the rest. What's the process like for that?
No, that's a really, really, really good question. Now, fortunately, I don't think I have been in the situation of missing a deadline more than once in over 10 years of doing this. But I will say that my day job is that of, or at least it used to be, a project manager. And all of the time it's about commitment, right? Committing and adjusting what you're doing to hit that commitment if you need to. But then communication. Like it's incredible how much can be achieved if you actually just write to someone and say, "Is there any wiggle room on this? Because this is how far I'm at. What about that? Can I get a little bit more time to do the X, Y, Z?" And sometimes no is the answer, but you've got that communication going, and then you just have to then adjust what you're doing to make sure that you hit it. Hey, Pex.
Yeah, is there kind of a thing about kind of a minimum viable product of saying, that they tell you, hey, we need to have at least these things done, and then if there's more,
Typically doesn't come from the client.
no.
Typically that comes from me. It's a little bit like sort of saying, "Hey Todd, I need a city map." Let's just say for the sake of argument, 22 inches by 17 inches. These are our parameters. You come up with agreements, and then you start finding that you're putting way too much detail in there, and it's taking way too long. Well, if you always got an eye on the deadline, simplify. Start removing those details. Stop get out of the weeds. And the chaos map's going to be a little bit like that. I will be in trouble if I label every single freaking alleyway. I will. So I'm not going to. I'm
Yeah, well,
so
that's a
I'm going to let the time drive.
right. Yeah, no, it I think it's especially it's I almost feel like some of those principles would work well for people just in their home endeavors, because obviously when you're working with a client and all that stuff, it really crystallizes those details. But I think as anyone knows who's done any kind of world building and stuff, it's very easy to go down those rabbit holes, and there's nobody necessarily there to put deadlines on you to say like you have to pull out, so you could just end up being endlessly
I love
fiddling
deadlines,
away.
man. I love deadlines. Deadlines keep you honest. Deadlines give you focus. Deadlines allow you to understand what you're working within, because otherwise you'll just keep going,
Yeah,
right? You'll
yeah,
just
for
keep
sure.
going, and that can be really, really, really dangerous. I don't like not working within deadlines, because at that point you're also kicking the stone down the road. You know, like, oh, I'll deal with that later. I'll work on this instead. And that's a rocky slope right there, you know. So
Yeah.
I love deadlines, and I it's all about communication. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. This is where I think I'll be at X amount of time. It's what I expect to have out of a team of programmers, let's say. And so that's what I bring to the client, you know.
Yeah, nice. So I asked you before the stream started about the work behind you, what it went to. So it went for. So do you want to tell us about what that
Yeah,
is
so
behind you?
this, hello, let me get out of the way. There we go. This is for Inkwell. They actually do a dice, geomorph dice with like entire dungeons and stuff on them. And if you got a stack, there you go. That's a type of thing. Beautiful. They're doing a Kickstarter in January. They got a whole new series coming, but they're doing actual geomorph cards. So it'll be printed stock, printed card
I
stock.
saw some of those. They had them at the at not Gen Con, at PAX.
You're going to see some of mine shortly next year. So they basically reach out to a whole bunch of cartographers. Dyson Locus is one of their staples all of the time. And they basically say, you know, we've got these themes. I need 9 maps per theme. So I'm basically creating my own little sort of geomorph dungeon, but all of us are working off the same template. So you could mix and match with my dungeons with someone else's. And so I've got 3 sets of 9 to do them, and 1 tile out of the 27 is behind me.
All right. And so what is that? That looks like some kind of crypt.
This is a crypt. This is a crypt. Get out the other way, Faden. What are you doing? Yeah. So the theme is crypt on this one.
Right.
So yeah, got a nice little sort of spooky, sort of crypty thing going on, and every tile is vastly different. But what they then do, Joe, the owner of Inkwell, he's got a program where he can actually then create the old school blue very quickly, equivalent of what you see behind me,
Oh,
and that's
really?
what goes on the dice.
Oh, he's got that automatically. I had no idea. I'm always a fan of the blue. I didn't know he had a cheat code to just generate a blue stuff. I
It's some
wonder.
kind of cheat code. I've not seen the process, because I was sitting there going, because this is the first time I've worked with him, and I'm like, so am I doing like 3 versions of this tile, or 27 tiles? And it's like, oh, no. I create my own. And it's like, you know, so I'm doing the color version. He'll take it from there and he'll come up with a dice version, which I think is
Wow.
stunning.
I'm gonna have to try to sneak that secret formula out from his music, because that would just be amazing. But I'll take all kinds of different maps, because once you get it in the blue, it really doesn't matter who made the geomorphs. They all fit together. They all look like the same style when you put it together. And I know he commented, because I commented to him if he was going to be making font files for these newer sets, because I'm a big fan of the geomorphs as fonts. But I
Oh,
guess it's kind of a
interesting.
really niche thing. But it's really cool if you're in Photoshop or somewhere, you can basically just use your keyboard and you have to just figure out what glyphs go to which keys, but you can just type it out and you've got geomorphs for days. Very, very cool. So his Kickstarter. So what is the Kickstarter in January? I'll have to ask him. I asked
All
him
I
at
know is
PAX to come
January.
on.
And honestly, even if I had a date, I don't know if I'm authorized to say it. I just know that he's intending first part of the year, because I have a deadline of the end of the month, or as close to
And
it as
Peck says
possible.
circle, circle, square, triangle, left bumper, up, right bumper. Yeah, exactly. The Konami code or close for Geomorphs. Yeah, they're great. They're great guys. Him and Keith, I had dinner with them during PAX. Really, really nice. I really like their stuff, and I feel like it's not the I want to say it's not the kind of sexiest stuff, because some people put out these amazing, really just beautiful, but they're workable. Like, to me, they're the ultimate in kind of really practical tools. Like, like hexographer, worldographer. Yeah, it's not as pretty. The hexes is not as artistic as some other ones, but you know what? When I need a usable hex map that's got everything on it, that's where I go. There are other ones I look at. If I want to put something and make an art print, sure, I would go do that instead. But I eventually need to use it in my game. Art print's not going to cut it. Just go to worldographer and boom. And that's kind of how I first connected with them. But yeah, their stuff is really, really nice. And I did a video on their scenario packs a little while back, and those were very cool. Do you
Nice.
know if these are just maps or they can have stories kind of
They're gonna have
on them too?
stories. They're gonna have
Oh,
stories. Yeah, I know
all
that much
right.
because they asked for my input on my own maps to get some story
Oh,
about them. So yeah,
all right. Well, I can't wait to. I'll have
and
to.
you
I'll
can
have to
see behind me. I mean, this thing's beautiful, and there's gonna be 27 of them, and I promise they're gonna be so super sexy.
awesome. Yeah, no, that'll be great to work for. Anything else in the pipeline? The Alyssa Faden pipeline
Yeah, because then
that you can talk about?
after that, I'm gonna do the GaryCon 2022 convention map.
All right, that was the one you're doing the whole like the it was going to be some kind of cosmic kind of planetary map with all kinds of different RPGs. Was that?
No, no, that's different again. So that'll be
Oh,
later in the year. And then I've
jumping
got the
ahead.
cosmic map, the cosmology of role playing. I've got like 1,000 labels to shove
So
on
which
that
one
bad
is that
boy and a
for? Wasn't that
thousand
for a con
planets.
too, or was that for a different
That's for
con?
me.
Oh, that's just for
That's
you.
for me. And when it's ready, I'll have it available as a print,
Oh, is Gary Con the
as a
one where you're
poster.
doing the map of the con that's going to go for the game that's going to be
Yep,
run?
yep.
Ah, okay. Well, how's that one
And
going?
next year is a horror theme. So I've got to make the map feel horror like.
All
And
right.
I hope to start working on that no later than February. January, February. I always reserve the first quarter of the year to get that map together. I feel a little bit behind. But I've got to get this Inkwell done. Then I've got to get the Chaosium one done. Talk about feeling the pressure. Then I got to get the Gary Con one done.
Ooh,
And
you got a lot going
then
on.
I think I am gonna honestly less commissions and more just me, maybe just drawing 1920s cities. I'm going to draw New York. I'm going to draw London inspired me, man. The Gaslight London map inspired me. I'm going to draw Cairo. I'm going to draw Darwin in Australia. I'm going to draw things that you could use in a Cthulhu game, you know?
And you're going to put them out yourself, or what are you going to do with them?
Yep. Yeah, I'll just make them available on my Patreon,
Nice.
put them out there.
I listen to a lot, or I watch a lot of kind of like Tolkien YouTube channels, and I know there's somebody who must sponsor a bunch of these channels because it comes up. But he basically seems, I don't know if it's he, she, they make a bunch of like real world maps, but in that kind of Tolkien style. So if you look at the Tolkien's kind
Mm,
of Middle Earth map, but he'll make
I've
them of
seen
kind
that
of
work.
anywhere. So they look really
Yeah.
pretty. I have
Yeah,
something that
I've got the book. I've had the book for
yeah.
years. I wanted to draw Portland, Oregon, where I live, but like the old Portland, Oregon, like from 100 years ago. And I never got around to it, but I thought it'd be really cool to draw these old cities like that in the old style. Well, now I've done Gaslight London. I'm like, dude, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I
Look,
am
if you
definitely
draw it,
doing it.
I feel like it's like that field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you draw it, they will come, kind
Well,
of thing.
not many people accommodate the Call of Cthulhu, but Call of Cthulhu is, so I want to say it's the second largest role playing game. Like it's good bit behind Dungeons and Dragons, but
Sure.
it's got a good market share and it's growing all of the time. It's a growing popular game. I want to do map assets, battle maps, and big maps of like Call of Cthulhu inspired locations. You know.
What's your favorite kind of map making? Do you like? So I feel like, well, I guess let me do it this way. I feel like I have I don't want to say a problem, but I see a pattern in battle maps that I'm not gonna say it drives me nuts because I get it, but I feel like maybe someone somewhere needs to shake up this formula where you have a battle map. And I know people are doing them for games, right? You're making a battle map for a game that doesn't exist yet, right? You're making it to put on your Patreon and put on somewhere a lot of map makers do. But they're always kind of the same. With essentially, they'll maybe be 2 or 3 areas, one something usually in the middle of the room that's supposed to be interesting, and then maybe one entrance. So an example, one will be you come into this cave. There's a river of lava going across the middle. There's one bridge that goes across, and you basically have those two sides, right? But the problem is I feel like with a lot of these maps is I feel like it's just become this kind of rote formula. Make a map, put something interesting in the middle, put a single doorway. Because I always look at them, I go, well, where do the enemies go if the enemies want to run away? Like there's nowhere they're trapped in this room. Or why does the interesting feature always have to be in the dead center? It's kind of like they took video game like Halo map kind of design where you have sides on people on 2 ends, and even though sometimes they'll be somewhat different locations, everything's basically to the middle, and it just makes them a whole lot less, I guess, practically useful. Though I get it, they're trying to really push just this central feature. Like, look, there's a lava river. But after you've seen the first lava river that goes through the middle of the room, and then a week later you start seeing the second or third lava river through the
Or
middle of the
replace
room,
it with a crevice, or replace
or a
it with a
crevice,
river,
a
right? Yeah, no,
river,
totally.
or
Well, I think this is part of. Look, I don't want to knock anyone, but I think what you're encountering are people who are incredibly talented artists who can really do lovely pieces. Like they're well drawn, they're epically colored, magnificently shaded and lighted. There was something that a show I was on not that long ago where a young lady had actually done a crevice that genuinely looked deep. It really did. I loved it, but it was a crevice right across the center of the map. And what you're encountering is most people who are doing these battle maps, if I'm going to be fair, aren't thinking beyond do it quickly, make it look lovely, and make it kind of an interesting one-off kind of encounter, but they're not thinking bigger picture. They're not thinking like beyond that encounter. They're just like, I'm doing a location where GM can just put miniatures and go, like roll for initiative, roll for initiative. And it's like less people are really trying to make it imaginative, unique, but also even potentially think about, well, what's beyond this map, you know? And so they fall into a trope. They fall into a mapping trope where they're trying to be quick, because for many of them, this is either they're direct living and they're just trying to get things onto roll 20, or they're trying to just churn out things on Patreon, whether it's imaginative or not, but it has visual, colorful wow factor. So everyone goes, oh, that's so beautiful. But you are kind of like, raising something that not many do, where it's like, yeah, but this is another one. It's like if you're a GM and maybe you have 12 of these maps and 6 of them have something cutting right across the center with the single bridge that crosses over it, whatever. I bet at a certain point you go, well, I can't use that. It's basically the same bloody map, just with lava on it. And
right.
that's the problem, right? And I think I know it's rare. I mean, it's a little bit like, okay, so I'm well known for my city maps. I love doing city maps, but I just don't slap down a city. By the time I'm done with it, it feels like someone could live there. It feels unique. It feels like it definitely grew from a little acorn of a hamlet or something, and kind of spread out from there. And you feel it. You feel it in here, right? And it makes the map more interesting because of that. It's got little things hidden in the forestry, or even like, what is that farm over there? And I think it's rare the person that's going to churn out a battle map who then wants to put personality into the battle map and do something a little bit different. That's a different skill set, and I don't think most cartographers have it. Some do,
Yeah,
not
I
all.
think the other thing is that what's key is kind of like what you're saying. When you have a big something flashy in the middle, it's something that you can really put your energy into. When you have to make something that doesn't have flashiness, and you have to try to make it interesting through all the little details, that's a lot harder. If I'm going to put a big lava spray in the middle of the map, like, look, there's a lava geyser in the middle of the room, I can put all kinds of wonderful coloring and shading and like, ooh, isn't that amazing? But if I was just going to say, well, I just want to make a battle map that's just a cave that could be kind of an all purpose, use this in a number of circumstances. When you need a cave, you can use it. So it can't have anything super flashy. It can't have a giant pit in the middle or something else, because this is for use in any kind of cave. Okay, random encounter in a cave. Here, I can drop this map down. Then how do I make it stand out from other maps? That's a lot
And
harder.
no, that's a really, really good point, because actually the whole Inkwell Geomorph stuff that I'm working on right now, I gave them some ink drawings of the first set, and I got pushback, valid pushback, on like maybe half of the ones that I'd drawn, because of exactly what you're saying. It's like they were boring. It's just room. If you now break this room down, doesn't matter what details you've drawn. If you now break this room down into its old school blue, let's call it black and white or blue and white version, it's just a square with some like little details in the middle. It's just a cave with some details in the middle, and it's valid. I think making things interesting is the trick. That's the next step.
Yeah, it's just I'll be definitely curious to see how your battle maps turn. It's just something I've noticed. And the other thing I think it's just interesting is that the people who make battle maps, and that's all they're doing is making battle maps. I wonder if they actually how they envision them being run. Because one thing at one point a while back, I think I tried to reach out to some cartographers on Facebook or somewhere that the names came up because I thought about it would be a neat collaboration to come up with a scenario on a battle map together. So if you just need the battle map, you have it, or you get the battle map with some kind of story around it, which might be a great as a random encounter or as a little mini adventure. And that would also, you could have things be different because then you could explain why they're different. So if there is no geyser in the middle, but instead we have a weird pillar over there with a platform on the top or something, instead of it just being there and hoping that people get it, we could explain it in terms of our context, and either the people who use it, people who would get the battle map could use it that way, or they could do something else with it. But there'd be that kind of thing where you could kind of create a context for it. But nobody was interested. I don't know, it's just because they didn't know where it was, or they
Well,
were
and
just
that's
comfortable
one thing
doing
that the GM
their own thing.
do. Right? In all fairness, the fact that they do write these little adventures, and they even have like little random like descriptions and stuff that they do for them, which I think you're getting literally adventure ideas, write ups, and a geomorph dungeon all in one package. My
Yeah.
hat is off to them because they are going down that road.
Oh, let's see. Oh, we got a comment from the chat. Let's see. I'll just throw this up there.
You got a few.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kaladin
Someone was
says, I
asking
see a
about
lot of them.
Greyhawk too. Greyhawk,
Yeah,
have
he
you
was
seen
asking about
Greyhawk?
Greyhawk.
What Anna Maya does?
I don't know. I'm not. I have to go
I
check
mean,
up on her
I
work.
thought, I mean, you've got me doubting myself now. But I thought Anna Maya is doing Greyhawk, and she's got the whole freaking atlas of Greyhawk.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. Kaladin was asking
She's doing
earlier.
the
I didn't post it.
Flaness.
Oh, Flaness. Okay.
Well, that
Was supposed to be
isn't
about kind of.
Flaness Greyhawk. I mean, I'm
I
showing
think
my
so, right? Or
ignorance.
Greyhawk's in Flaness, or Flaness is next. I have to
Those
pull it up. I
Greyhawk
have
have
the.
an atlas like Forgotten Realms. I thought Anna Maya,
Oh,
yeah, a
yep.
Greyhawk.
That is it. Yep.
So,
Pex knows.
Kaladin, look up Anna Maya. Meyer. In fact, we're on the fantasy mapping show tomorrow night.
There you go.
Um,
Perfect plug.
it's like that's her shtick. She's doing Greyhawk, and she does it all in like 3D. Seriously, she's got a banks of computers that she's doing it, and she's super, super, super good at it. And if you like Greyhawk, she is creating your jam right down to blades of freaking grass, man, or all the way out.
And she's going to be on with you and Lord Gasumbo tomorrow. What time is your stream tomorrow?
5 o'clock Pacific time on Twitch/Lord Kasumba.
9 o'clock p.m. Right, so that's
9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
oh, Eastern Standard. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, because he's in New Jersey, right? So 9 o'clock Eastern Standard. Check your local stations for when that is.
Yeah,
when that time is
seriously,
for you.
look her up. You're gonna see her work. You're gonna fall out your seat. She's your jam.
So speaking of Lord Gasumba, he was probably the other. But so the couple of I made contact with at PAX was Free League Press or Free League, whatever the thing is. Talk to them. Twilight 2000. Talk to Wet Ink Games. They do Into the Word and Wild and some other games that look really cool. And then the Inkwell Idea guys who were great. And then I also happened to run into Lord Gasumba. And this is where I told you, told you on either on Discord or Twitter or whatever, that I name dropped you to get an in because I was down poking around the free play role playing game room, and he had put up kind of on the wall behind his table a little his coat of arms, so to speak. And I recognized it from seeing your posts about being on his show. So I just kind of started watching his game, and then ended up talking to the person who was helping him, and then ended up talking to him. And I was able to kind of drop your name as my intro to, hey, I'm not just a weird dude watching your game. Like, we have a someone in common who can prove my bona fides, and that was you.
He has great setups, man. He has really great setups.
I mean, his simplified setup was great because I think someone was saying like, oh, I think I forget the guy's name who I guess is just someone who is active on his channel and just was here to kind of help set up. Said that this is a very what he had there as far as the minis in the terrain. It was just inside of dungeons. There wasn't a lot. It was just kind of like a very, very low key version because he didn't feel like hauling it all from, I guess, South Jersey, I think is where he lives. How did you run it, make his acquaintance, and get involved with him?
Anna Maya has known him for a while. I because he is super big fan of Greyhawk, and he runs regular sort of games in Greyhawk because he's got a regular stream on it. Anna Maya and he are like really super tight because that's obviously what she does. And then Anna and I wanted to do the fantasy mapping show, and she's tight with Gasumba, so he's got a platform to do it on. So we're like, cool. That's how I met him.
What do you guys talk about on the fantasy mapping show? Is it always the same thing, or does it you have just different topics? Or what's the deal?
Different subjects. So, for example, let me see. I'm just pulling up the agendas. I don't remember. I think week 1 or month 1, we were just talking about Anna and I in general and maps in general. But then and sometimes we have guests. We had dungeon maps and we had a guest on. We spoke about region maps for the 3rd time. I had a guest on. You want a map? Now what was the subject matter of episode 4? Settlements, subject of episode 5. Hex maps was the last one we did in November. And I have copies of all of these on my YouTube channel too. So if you want to go back and watch them,
I will definitely go back
night,
and watch the Hex maps.
It's publishers. So we're going to have Troll Lord Games and Frog God Games on the show with us. Like, they obviously are publishers. They need maps all of the time. What do they think about? What are they looking for in a good map? And what is the process from their perspective? It's our holiday edition, of course, because we're coming up to Christmas right now. So Troll Lord and Frog God are just going to have this massive giveaway. This is going to be things getting given away, prize drawing all of the time. We're just going to have fun. I'm going to get drunk, get in a fight with the cats, and it's going to be a blast.
Oh, that should be really awesome. Yeah, I one thing I really appreciate about our chats is being able to get different perspectives, because I think you can often end up in a little bit of an echo chamber when you're only talking to other people who do pretty much exactly what you do, and seeing kind of how things work and getting that different perspective. I think on different parts of the hobby is amazing. He was really nice. He was nice enough to not only kind of chat with me. I did record an interview with him, but it was so loud in the room. I thought I was going to record the video on my iPhone. I thought, I'll be slick. I'll record the video on my iPhone. The app crashed when I won't even say at the end, but it crashed during it. Lost the video. I might still have the audio, but I haven't had the heart to actually look at it because I'm afraid that there was just so much noise in that poor little box of a room we were in with people talking and echoes and everything. But he was really great, and then we kind of chatted as he was. As he was leaving. I wish I'd gotten to play in his game. But the one thing with PAX is that the gaming part is very disorganized, or at least not organized in a way that made it any kind of sense to me. So it was very easy, at least for me, to kind of lose out on actually playing games because they didn't have any kind of digital setup. So I'm just happy I stumbled into that room at the right time and spot him.
Did you see Noble Dwarf there in the vendor hall?
I think they were there. Yeah, I saw them.
All right.
I didn't have a chance to stop by. I'm in a weird spot. It took me, I mentioned this on my post stream, but I had a little bit of, I guess, imposter syndrome as I'm going up. I don't I had to kind of work myself up into going up and being sort of more forward and saying, hi, I'm Todd and I do stuff on YouTube and this or that. So I kind of spent the first day kind of lurking around, and then the second day I kind of did some panels and things. It was really the last day that I was like, actually really was talking to him. He really kind of gave me, it wasn't really a pep talk, but so I was asking him about sponsorships, and he said, you know what, you just have to do it. He said, I'm a salesperson in my other jobs, so you have to do. And so I kind of took that to heart in the last day and said, hey, I'm going to go talk to people. And that's when I kind of ended up making some inroads with some folks. But I feel like I'm kind of off the schneid a little bit with that. So maybe the next time I'll be better. But he was really great. How's your Cthulhu game going? How is Masks of Nyarlathotep? Though, and I saw the box there at the Chaosium thing, and if I wasn't already pushing my budget, I might have splurged on it, even though I can't imagine I will ever actually run it because it's just a massive box full of stuff. And I'm kind of a sucker for massive boxes.
I'm loving
it,
man. I'm loving the experience. I'm loving running the game. For anyone that's interested, Masks of Nyarlathotep is one of the largest campaigns that I think has ever been written. It was written back in the 80s, rewritten a couple of times since. They re-released it fairly recently. So they've got a 7th edition version of it. And yeah, I mean, it's the books like this, and it's world hopping from Peru to New York to London, Cairo, Africa, Australia, Shanghai. I mean, it really just doesn't go all over. That's discounting any sort of side quests, etc. And my guys right
Are they
now
still in
are
Egypt?
still in Egypt, but they're really super close to being done in Egypt. I think they will be done in about 2 sessions with Egypt. They're then going to leave. I've actually been adding side content of my own development too. So they're going to go to Syria after Egypt, chasing the Holy Lance of Antioch. Um,
Oh, nice.
which would be a nice little sort of thing. I've actually got a 3D prop I made for it and everything. I've got a
And now
video
is
coming
that
out
an
on
Alyssa
that.
creation or is that in the
That's a
book?
little creation. I'm going to run it at GaryCon actually. So yeah, and then after that, I don't know. Africa, Shanghai, Australia. I'm not sure where they're going. But what I've got the good fortune is that my players will tell me where they're going to go next, and I hit pause on my game for like a couple of months. I start getting prepared for the next chapter, and Jack, my husband, runs a Shadowrun game then. And so we're kind of doing this little leapfrogging.
But you're still in the Call of Cthulhu phase, right? Because I'm happy to delve into Shadowrun if you started your Shadowrun game again.
So around February, March, maybe I will definitely be playing Shadowrun because they'll be done with Syria. They'll be done with the Lance of Antioch. And yeah, I mean, I'll then talk to you about Shadowrun. Although Jack is the one running that, I can tell you all about my character.
Absolutely. What does the lance do? Can you share it, or are you afraid that some of your players are going to hit the stream and find out what the lance does?
Right now, I've kind of got it a little bit open. I haven't decided because I haven't actually got the thing yet. But I am definitely going to have it be pretty damn good against mythos-like creatures, right? I mean, there's plenty of creatures out there that don't take damage or take minimal damage from like mundane weapons. This is going to be a little bit more special. This is going to be doing almost like holy damage type of deal. So it'll be a nice little sort of stout weapon, and it will help them in the tribulations to come. Because this campaign can be a killer. I mean, Call of Cthulhu can just be a killer. So this will give them some false reassurance.
And after Egypt, how many more spots do they have to hop, or is it kind of all variable? Like I'm not sure. Like what are the
Africa, Australia, and Shanghai? At least
those.
They could do 2 of the 3, but it's going to be 3. There's
in Africa do they go?
Another year and a half in it.
Wow. Is that including the breaks? So not a year and a half straight, but year and a half including the.
It will include the breaks, yeah. But I mean, we're going pretty intense on it, whereby it's like as soon as I'm ready to run the next chapter, we're jumping into it. We're not going to be 3, 4, 5 months playing Shadowrun. We all want to be. This is going to sound wrong. We want to be done with Masks on Nyarlathotep, but only so we can then play things like Horror on the Orient Express or Beyond the Mountains of Madness. And we can't do that if we're playing Masks. So we have to make Masks our primary focus.
Now, how does it work with Cthulhu? So I know in, say, something like D&D, right, you have levels. So you would say, okay, we're doing, I don't know, whatever, Isle of Dread, levels 1 to 3. And then levels 4 to 6 will be something else, and levels 5 to 8. Is there a concept in Cthulhu at all? I know Cthulhu is not really leveled, but is it just, hey, if you by hook or by crook, your character survives Masks, you can just hop into whichever other one? Or is there some concept of how much skill points or something you have to measure, where you should be on your character journey when you hit a certain...
Well, funny enough, and Caledon Sama just said, I heard that Faden's game's XP is rare as diamonds. So there's a level of truth to that, but so Call of Cthulhu is a little bit different because it is a percentile based game. You've got all of like these skills that you may or may not have, and they level up. So if you've got, let's just say for the sake of argument, rifle at 50%, and you use it successfully, it might go up like X amount of points. So this character should be at the end of the game a little bit tougher, yes. He may even have a magic book, right? Or a mythos tome that he's casting spells from, and the Holy Lance of Antioch, for the sake of argument. Could you take him into another game? Yes. But the thing about Call of Cthulhu, I think there's a couple of things here. One is you get to a point where you actually just want to run a different character, right? It's a different game, maybe even a different time. And you just like my players have got like half a dozen backups each. They've got characters waiting to rock and roll. But also the game can be very deadly even if you're not intending it to be a deadly game. Because Call of Cthulhu, yeah, sure, you're fighting cultists now, but what is this they just summoned? Oh, this thing is going to stomp on your head, and it could be like gone. You're just gone. Even if a cultist shoots you with a shotgun, you take 4d6 damage. How many hit points you got? 11, and your hit points never go up. So it can be literally night and day. Now, my characters have managed to go a long time. No one's died. It's been close a couple of times. And I think someone's going to die in Egypt between me and you. I think it's going to happen. But so it's a type of thing where A, you want to change your character. B, you might be forced to change your character. And you kind of just want to move on and get something else. But then, regardless of all of that, characters slowly go insane. It is a slow leech of your sanity. So you may have a character from Mask of the Ayahuasca. He may not be in any good shape for actually playing in anything else. Time to break out a new character, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Kaladin asks if we've ever played Beyond the Supernatural. I'm not familiar with it.
I'm
Are
not
you familiar
with
with
that one
Beyond the
either.
Supernatural? Kaladin, put it in the
Kaladin,
chat.
tell
Let
us
us
about
know
it.
what's up about it, because I don't think I've heard about it. I think the other thing I was just thinking probably makes sense too is presumably you might want different skills. So for example, if it's say in masks, I pumped a guy full of driving skill because I figure we'll be driving all over the place. Might not be that helpful if we're trapped on the Orient Express. Probably not going to have a lot of chance to do much driving. So I might rue the fact if I put all my points in driving and we end up on a train for the whole adventure. So I might want to rethink that and I don't know, put my points in.
No, there's a level of truth to that too. There is. I mean, what I like about Call of Cthulhu is the skills don't even really matter so much. Just have a nice little smorgasbord and you're good. And some kind of balance in the party as a whole, but what game isn't like that? And then, yeah, sure, you might be sitting on a driving skill of 50 and it doesn't get used much, but that's okay because you got all of these other skills. And it's not even really about the skills, it's about the story and the narrative. And so you end up having fun anyway. But yeah, you may decide that you want to actually bring in a different character, or your first character dies, or the next game you realize you are playing like Horror on the Orient Express, and you're like, maybe this break and entry guy that from New York isn't such a good fit. I'll do it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, how do you mitigate skill rolls? I know you can push and risk stuff that way. Do they have mechanisms for, I don't know, helping or using tools or other things to essentially propel characters who may not have more than 20% or something in a skill to give them more of a fighting chance to succeed, or do you just have to kind of take your lumps and go with it?
Not really. You kind of take your lumps. Like for the sake of argument, what skill was it? Might be machine guns. I forget. I don't know. But it starts off at 1%. Starts off at 1%. Unless you put some points in it during character generation, probably not going to go up much, And there's plenty of skills that start at 10 or 15. And if you don't put points in it, oh well, Pedro. But that said, there's some mechanics in this that I like in that so much, where it says if you have skill in this and there isn't like some kind of adverse condition going on around you, then okay, you do it, you're fine, right? So let me pick on climb. I think climb starts at 25%. You don't put any points in it for the sake of argument, because maybe you don't see yourself as a big climber. You come to a drain pipe, you're trying to actually get out of a building. Just for this, because it's a narrative-driven game, I go, yeah, you're fine. You can climb down. They're sort of sliding your way part of the time. Now, if it's raining, or if there's a monster chasing you, now you're under adverse pressure, right? So now I can require a roll. But if you fail, now it's not a case you fall like your Dungeons and Dragons. You fall, you take your damage. This is the keeper would turn around and say, you start going out on the drain pipe and you realize it's way wetter than you were thinking. You don't feel good about it. So you can now do something else instead. It's not a
Okay. So
fail,
yeah, it's a different
so
set of
to speak.
consequences.
It's a different set of consequences. Now you can push. Now you can say, well, you know what? I really want to do this. But now that is consequence if you fail again on this one, and it will always be bad in some way. So that's one thing I like. The other thing is you can actually get advantage dice, just like in Dungeons and Dragons too. So if something is favoring you, let's say for the sake of argument, you come up with some kind of, well, you know what? I grabbed the bed sheet. I'm going to quickly tie that around, and I'm going to lower myself down on that. Like a kind keeper may turn around and say, yeah, you know what? Roll an extra dice, and you take the best results out of
That's
that.
nice. I like that a
So
lot.
there's either way, it always feels like it's not a failure. It never feels like a true failure. You got plenty of options.
Yeah, it kind of has that, I guess, sort of fail forward like aspect where
Yeah,
it's kind
fatal
of
forward.
pushing you
I
towards a
love that. It's
different
just all about the
consequence.
story, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and as a keeper, the rules are very light. They're empowering. The rules are like whatever the keeper says. If you feel like the character just succeeds on this, then you got it. That's fine. Whatever. Move on.
Oh, let's see. Peck says they read an interesting house rule a while back for hardcore mode. I feel like Call of Cthulhu. Does anyone need a hardcore Call of Cthulhu? All skills are 1% at character gen instead of the baselines. Haven't tried it yet, but it sounds interesting. So I guess that's all about. Do you get potentially? Is it because I know some systems, if you fail a skill, that leads to advancement. In Cthulhu, is it you have to succeed and then you get some
You
kind of
have to
pip?
succeed for a chance to advance.
Ooh, so yeah, you better work on all those advantages into your corner before you try one of
Oh
those
no,
one
totally.
percenters.
Now, by the way, Roman, I did see a question. I will answer the question about deaths here shortly. But the whole thing about I'm not sure I agree with starting everything at 1%. It's a little bit like playing a computer game on Iron Man mode, only allowed to die once, and I'm going to crank up all of the difficulty to max. It's like, yeah, you can do that, sure, but why? And with Call of Cthulhu, I think there's certain skills like, oh, look, I can throw a ball, I can throw a grenade, right? Now, I've never thrown a grenade before, but if you give me one that's shaped like a ball, I can throw it. I may not be the best thrower in the world. That's why it starts at 25%. But I'm also not a muppet, which is why it's not 1%. I think
Right.
there's certain skills that, you know, speak English. I have a baseline of being able to speak English. I can put better or read write English. I can put more points into it if I want. But if we say 1%, we're basically saying I have no intrinsic ability to either throw, climb, drive, shoot a gun, like read, write, and I'm not sure I agree with that. I
I feel
think
like
there are
that's
some
like the Three
baseline skills.
Stooges. The Three Stooges meets Cthulhu, where they're just kind of bumping into each other and kind of can't do anything right. Or it just puts a real. I think the only other way I could see it working would be if, to your point of, you have to pick the thing to do that you have so much advantages or that there's no pressure, so that you hand wave the roll away, right? So that you can't ever get in a spot where the creature's coming through the door. You have to roll that climb skill. You have to plot everything out so that you're always kind of in a safe space so that you can forego the roll. And someone says, well, 1%'s enough. You can climb, so you can climb, or whatever it happens to be. Because otherwise, yeah, you're very, very little chance of success. And the thing is to your point, when you're saying, okay, you fail the climb roll, what else do you want to try? It's like, well, you're not better at anything else. So it's not like, okay, well, I can't climb, so let me try to do this other thing. It's like, you're terrible at that too. So it's just going to be, it ends up being just I
I
feel
mean,
like
I'm
a,
sure that that system would allow you to put points in it during character generation, so you could up it from 1% to something. So I'm guessing that you have to have more points available to you for doing that. But I don't know. That allows then also certain people to, let's say, tank those core skills and use those extra points on other non-core skills. I don't know. I think it's open to abuse, and I think you end up with some pretty unbalanced characters that just don't feel right. It's like, what do you mean you can't read right? Well, I'm just never going to do it in the game. What, you've got 1% in read right? So you're a moron. Yeah, but I want to use those points elsewhere. I don't think it's making the game more difficult. If anything, I feel like it's probably a little bit too min-maxy.
the guy's got it 1% in read right, but 75 in surgery. Somehow he made it all the way through medical school,
Right, exactly,
but he can't read or write.
exactly.
He's
Right.
just a caveman doctor. I'm just a simple caveman doctor. Roman, aka Terrence, who I know from has his own channel. Hey, Terrence said he played Delta Green and got blasted in the face with a shotgun trap right at the beginning of an investigation. It's hardcore enough. I'm not sure what a shotgun trap looks like, but yeah, I don't think I'd want to. I don't think I want to play one.
Well,
Have
a
you?
double barrel, a shotgun, just like I think it's at least 2d6. It might be doing 4d6, and that's one barrel. Some guns do more. Like if I
Oof.
open up with a Tommy gun,
Have you
and
played? No, go
humans have
ahead.
11 to 12 hit points. Delta Green is just the modern version of it.
Yeah,
So
have
the
you played
damage is
Delta
even
Green, or
going to be harder.
do you stick to classic, or do you bounce around some of the other Cthulhu
I bounce around.
verses?
Oh,
Or
I'm all over the place. Invictus, anything. I'll play absolutely anything. Yeah, and I've run it too. Like I'm doing flash forward and flash back sequences in my game. So I'm doing like these dream sequences, but so I'm taking them and I'm putting them in ancient Rome, or I put them in like the 1000 1090 AD, the siege of Antioch. I actually had them play Muslim characters at that time. So that was Dark Ages Cthulhu. So I will play absolutely anything. I've played a little bit of Delta Green. I don't own the books, but I mean that's just a modern version of it, you know. And yeah, it's deadly. But Call of Cthulhu is deadly. Roman, to answer your question, I haven't had any deaths yet, but I've had one player shot with a rifle or a pistol. I got within hit points of dying. I had another one
oof.
knifed in the back, and he had one hit point remaining. I thought he was gone. That was an almost kill. I had one player actually just amazingly against a Cthulhu creature, Shantak, which is basically a horrible sort of dragon type creature. But I could not get a hit with my Shantak, and he was rolling like a demon. So he managed to evade getting smushed because a hit would have outright killed him. But they're facing worse next actually January 1st. We're going to play on January 1st, and they don't know it yet, but they are facing much worse. And
Oh,
this system is one where it's like, okay, you know, I hit you with a pistol, I do 5 points of damage. It's like, oof, that hit really hard. That's half my hit points. Or same pistol, I hit you, I impale, I multiply I add my damage on top of max damage, I do 22 points of damage. Yet. So the game is deadly. It is deadly. It can turn on the die. You need a lot of luck to get deep. They have got deep, and that I think they all realize that at some point the luck's going to turn, which is why they all have backup characters planned.
oh yeah, for sure. How's the insanity? Is anybody creeping closer to losing their
Oh,
marbles?
that one's creeping. That one is creeping. So the thing about one thing I don't know. Let me rephrase this. So everyone's got a sanity level. It's basically a percentage. And if you're smart during character generation, you try to ensure that you've got a pretty reasonable sanity. Because anytime that you see something that is horrific or just not of this world, I say roll your sanity. And if you fail, if you don't get below it, you're going to lose more than you would have if you succeeded, right? You could lose a D10, you could lose a D20, 2D6, whatever it is. And so the lower your sanity starting, the greater the chance that it's just going to tank. And as it tanks, every single time you have to roll, now you got less and less chance. Now you're losing, and it's just it's off a cliff. At that point, you're done. If you start with about 75, 80 points of sanity, you got a damn good chance of succeeding when I say, describe a scene and ask you to roll. 80% chance you're going to make it. So maybe you only lose 1 point or a D3 or nothing because you made your sanity roll. You keep your mind straight. The catch is if you get through a chapter and succeed, you do well, you do certain things like you defeated the bad guy, you rescued the hostage. Every single success gives you more sanity. You
Oh,
can't
you
go
can
over a
actually get
certain
back.
max.
You can get
You get
sanity back.
rewards.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's actually quite easy to ride a high sanity
Mm.
in the game. And so my guys were like high sanity coming into Cairo until they started learning spells. And
Oh,
this is not D&D like stuff either. You're tapping into dark arts, and every single time you cast a spell, you lose sanity. If you summon something, you're losing sanity because of that. Two, if there's consequence to maybe this thing now goes running amok, killing civilians, you lose sanity for that. These guys are beginning to slide on their sanity right now.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way of doing spells, and obviously fits the Cthulhu verse. I kind of wish. I think it's something I know that DCC does stuff with, and I know there's kind of wild magic, but yeah, five D&D in general, a lot of the spell casting feels maybe overly sanitized, and I kind of like the idea that there's something kind of dark and almost dirty about pulling on some kind of weird alien energy to kind of make stuff happen. Brian Smith says, "This ain't your grandpa's dark arts."
And
No,
it's not. And
indeed.
that's one of the. I love the mechanic and the pacing of Call of Cthulhu. I love that typically, even if it's a one-off game, there's a research stage where you're trying to figure out what's going on and what's behind it, and then ultimately kind of get a good clue as to what you need to do about it. And if there's some dark force behind it, you get a clue to that fact, so you can then prepare yourself for the final big bad boss encounter. Right? Typically, that's how, or avoid it. A lot of that at Cthulhu is just get out. Now you realize what's going on. Get out of there before like it stomps on your face. But what I love about Call of Cthulhu versus something like Dungeons and Dragons is magic isn't really for the realm of man. Magic is a dark art. It is. You are literally tearing down the veil between this world and other worlds, and you are pulling in very dark matters, color of space type shit, and that's different. You're not throwing fireballs and lightning bolts and magic missiles around. That's not what we're doing here. You're summoning something, or maybe trying to obscure the creature being able to see the party, but also losing sanity at the same time. So it's different.
What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite time period for running Cthulhu? You like this kind of early 20th century? Do you like the Dark Ages, Rome, present day?
Yeah, if I'm going to be fair, I like the traditional 1920s, but only because I feel like it's close enough to us where it's familiar as players and keeper alike, but it's also distant enough where it has that nostalgic charm, where there's early era of like, telephones, and yes, they have electricity, although they don't have electricity,
Right.
it's got the cars of the old charming cars, or the plane technology is still really early. I love that. I love the early era of that type of thing. I run a lot of Invictus, the Roman era. I've done some Dark Ages, but my favorite is the 1920s. But I'll run anywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
it
I
seems
want to
like the
do a whole lot of in
1920s.
World War II.
Oh, that would be great too. Seems like 1920s is nice because, like you're saying, it's in the far past, not the distant past, but yeah, it's in the past. But it has kind of all the things we have, but in a way that, like we talk about movies and how movies have had to change things since everyone has basically phones and computers in their pockets all the time. Whereas if you place it back in the 20s, sure, you can make that phone call, so you have access to that, but you have to find the phone booth or go into a hotel. Like it's got those kind of built-in obstacles. Or sure, you could take a plane, but it takes extra time and whatever. Whereas in an earlier age, you don't have that stuff, so you're kind of limited. I imagine, we'll ask him to Invictus in a minute, that either the travel times are really enormous, or you're going to stay kind of much closer to your central area. You can't reasonably go, oh, I'm going to go Hong Kong and then Australia and then Africa and then North America. A, because those places, some of them weren't discovered yet, and B, it's like, well, how long are you going to be in that trireme? Sure, you want to spend 3 years rowing, yeah, you can get there, or we're just going to be playing around here. So how does that work in Invictus? How does that idea of traveling from place to place, is it just more localized, or do they just spread out the travel times to take into account that it's might take you months to get from Rome
Well,
to
spread
wherever you're
out
going?
for sure. But it's also a great something like Invictus. In fact, let me take a step backwards. Any of these time periods, I think, are a wonderful opportunity to experience, almost like a time machine, something different, something historical. I started one of my Call of Cthulhu Invictus games on a trireme, going across the Mediterranean, and suddenly the players were there, man. They could start picturing this scene. So I think it's a great opportunity to really start to introduce a different ambience than, let's say, you would be used to. Like if you did that in Dungeons and Dragons, I think you'd get a different feel for it, because Dungeons and Dragons just is a different sort of setup, right? Well, when the minute you're doing Call of Cthulhu, where everything is just more deadly, everything is a little bit more sort of story driven, it's a little bit more narrative, it's a little bit more bare bones. You feel more vulnerable to the world. you find your brain slipping into that time period way more willingly. For things like travel, you can abstract it, you know. And I mean, the Romans were capable of getting around quick enough. A trireme was capable of bombing across the Mediterranean pretty damn fast in some instances. It's not taking them months and months. But then you can also slow things down, fast forward, you know, red line it a little bit and sort of say, so it takes you a month or two to get to the other side of Greece, and like just pick it up there, or just have a nice little sort of monster sort of wilderness adventure sort of going on. It slows down, it becomes more localized. You're not doing masks of Nyarlathotep, like jumping continent to continent in Invictus, but you can make it smaller. You can still hit Spain, you could still hit Greece or the Middle East, you know, you could do that.
What kind of enemies? Is it the same? You fighting the same kind of old gods, or they're different? Do they throw some different gods in the mix? And
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
you could go nuts. You could. One thing I love about Call of Cthulhu in general is it really encourages you to start researching the weird stories about that time period and that location, weird events that happened, any excuse to bring them actually into the game, you know, kind of explain them from a Call of Cthulhu perspective, and or use the creatures and the lore from that actual location. So yeah, you end up with all of this sort of Roman-esque or ancient world-esque sort of lore being brought in instead. I mean, they may still have deep ones in there, and Cthulhu may still be out there, or Dagon may still be out there, but you can put in all sorts of other things too, especially mention going to like ancient England with the Druids and stuff. You could start getting real nuts on that, like the ritual like nuts.
oh yeah, I just saw a really cool, nothing to do with Call of Cthulhu, but documentary about Stonehenge, where they determined that the stones were basically carried from Wales by people who essentially emigrated from Wales to the current site of Stonehenge, and they kind of brought it over as sort of a kind of a reminder of home, or just to kind of bring their culture. They decided to bring their whole henge with them, and so the original stones of Stonehenge, they were able to find out where they were quarried in Wales, where the original circle was, where they were, and then the fact that at some point, in some great kind of changing, they literally picked up the stones when they moved to around the Stonehenge area. They literally picked up all their stones and carted them, you know, all the way across to the other side. And it was just fascinating, the amount of effort. And I feel like there's some great, um, it could be pulled into some lore for some games
Oh
somewhere,
yeah,
like this whole thing
oh
of like
yeah,
doing
for
stone
sure.
circles and whatnot. You could do a Invictus where it's the origins of your Lance of Antioch, and then maybe you could do like a whole series of like whatever was like the proto Lance, and then in Dark Ages you could then have where maybe some of this remnant gets pulled into this medieval item, and then fast forward to your Masks game where the lance in its whatever form it is now exists. It's pretty neat that they've been able to spread out and do all that. Are the rules basically the same, or are there kind of
Rules are
different
basically the
wrinkles?
same. Yeah, they have different source books and things like that. And sometimes like Dark Ages has some different rules in there. But honestly, you can kind of just ignore them. It's like, yeah, but how do shields work? Give me the stats for like swords and stuff. Okay, I'm good to go. A little bit of background lore, a little bit of history of the period, whatever it is, and you're good. They're basically source books for the period that you're dealing with, and then it's the same game.
Peck says he's not the only one who likes rocks. I didn't know Pex had a rocks thing. Oh, Terrence Roman asked if your players do transatlantic accents. Does anyone like to put on accents for your 1920s game? Act like they're in a
So, you
radio
know,
play?
accents are an interesting one because they can be, if you're not careful, not very PC at the gaming table, right? I mean, I'm going to step back for a moment and sort of say everyone loves a good accent, particularly if it's done well. It can really add a lot to a character. If you're a GM and you do accents very well, catch accents very well, then it can certainly add a whole lot of background for something like playing in Caro. However, I'm English. And if I had an American doing an English accent, it actually start getting annoying. And I'm pretty even keeled myself.
I
And
believe it.
you, it's like, and there was like this. been some discussion over the last few years of, well, what if you have someone of Indian descent in your group and you start doing this Indian accent? Is that going to get offensive to them? What if they're actually from Japan or China and you start putting on, an Eastern accent? Is that going to be offensive to them? And I think there's good potential of that. So I'm blessed in that I can't do accents for shit. So I have to rely on other tools to be able to try and get just different ways of speaking for my characters. Um, I do have one or two players, if they're playing Scottish, they would love to try and do a little bit of Scottish accent. One of them is from Egypt, so he likes to try and do a little bit of an Egyptian accent. But at the end of the day, it's not a huge part of our game, in all truth.
I think it's gotten overblown. I mean, I think it's that kind of the streaming of games has become such to really put a lot of focus on accents where I mean, I don't remember people even talking about that stuff until people started seeing things like Critical Role and where you had voice actors who were making accents. Nobody back in the day, I don't remember anybody going like, "Oh, I got to do accents," or "What's the deal with accents?" Like it was just you might say that, "Hey, the guy speaks with this accent or something similar," and then you just talk in your normal voice, and then you just let your imagination run away with you. Well, we are at the bottom of the hour. Thanks again, Alyssa, for
That
coming.
went
Anything
fast.
I know it does. It always goes fast, which is great. I'd hate if anytime we come back to this, you're like, oh man, that hour went slow. Then I'll know we're in trouble. Anything, last things you want to mention? Any last things you want to push? Any links you want me to drop in the chat or the show notes for you?
No links. All I will say is everyone have an absolutely fantastic holiday period. I'm going to just keep on mapping over the next X amount of months like I do, and I will be sharing it all with all of you right here. I'll keep you appraised of how my Call of Cthulhu game is going, and next time we talk, we may have some character deaths to talk about.
Oh, I cannot wait. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Absolutely have a happy holidays. For those of you who are regulars in the channel, I will see you tomorrow for the OSR Reddit Roundup. For the other folks who may come in just for Alyssa, I'll see you on the other side of the new year. But thanks for hanging out, everybody. Game on, and I will talk to you later.